What's up, you guys? Welcome back to 10 Million in 10 Months. I'm Kim, CEO and co-founder of Listener Brands, which owns CurlMix and Forbes Only. And today, you guys, I'm going to show you how you can crowdfund $4.5 million from your own customer base. And I have 10 tips for you guys. But before I get into that, go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe. Click that subscribe button. And so you guys can get the notification on our next video. All right, so let's get into it. Tip number 1, you absolutely must be a master storyteller. Think of crowdfunding like you do a politician who's raising money for their campaign, right? They're shaking hands, they're kissing babies, they're answering all the questions, they're always smiling, they're happy to talk to anyone. And honestly, I really feel like you need to be that way to successfully crowdfund $4.5 million. Yeah, there are people online who are not the nicest who might do it. Or yeah, there are people online who don't show their face that maybe could do it. But I'm just going to show you the easiest way you can do it, right? And the easiest way you can do it is by being a master storyteller and personable. Why? Because you're going to have every person you talk to could potentially invest. Your cousin, your customer, your aunt, an entrepreneur you knew in the past, somebody who doesn't even know you. I meet people to this day who literally stop me on the street and say, I invested in your company. I never met them before. We have over 7,000 investors, guys. So you have to be the person that is okay with shaking hands and kissing babies, right? So, and be a master storyteller at that. So that's the first thing, right? Because you have to tell, people remember stories. They don't remember facts and figures. Most people are not investing because of the financial understanding of what your business is. They don't really necessarily get that sometimes. But what they do know is the person who's telling the story, the founder, and whether or not they believe in you. So that's going to be the first reason if they write you a check at all is because of their belief in the founder. And that usually comes from storytelling, which comes from trust. And so that's going to be the first thing that you need to kind of master to crowdfund. The second thing that you need is an email list. Email list or SMS list. Honestly, you need both because you have to bring your crowd to the platform to help you raise money. It's not like I'm going to use a platform that's widely known and they're going to raise all my round for me. Not how that works. Of our round, WeFunder only made up 17% of that round. So that means we brought 83% of those people. And if I look at my metrics, I had the highest investment on the first day and on the last day. And each time it was a day I was sending out 2 and 3 emails. Emails and SMS drove most of our investments. Now, I will say, I didn't send very many SMS lists, SMS campaigns or text messages because they were expensive. So you pay for those every time you send them, and we have a big list, right? I don't want to pay $1,000 to send everybody to go invest, and they might not. So I used a lot of email campaigns. And for us, we had a pretty big list, a few 100,000 people on our list. So that made it a lot easier to actually crowdfund. If you don't have a list and you're going to go ahead and build a list to crowdfund, you might as well go traditional venture, right? And I would only do that, build a list to crowdfund, if you could not go traditional venture, okay? And if you can't do any of those things, then figure out how to make money first in your business and then forget about raising temporarily until you can get more traction and more people on a list, right? I would not have crowdfunded to start my business. I would have crowdfunded after my business has been in business for a couple of years so that I have that trust factor with my customers. My third tip for crowdfunding is that you need a compelling narrative. Every story or every good story has a hero and a villain, right? You're not just out here saying, invest in me because I'm amazing, rah, rah, rah. You're saying, this is the villain. So for us, major traditional venture capital was the villain because essentially they were the ones that had access to really great deals and really great companies before they IPO. And they're the ones making all the money, right? And who is the hero? The small guy, the retail investor, the person who has $200 to invest or $300 to invest or $1,000, but they don't have $100,000 or $1 million to invest, right? And so I basically was letting people know that they've been missing out on this opportunity to build wealth in their portfolio simply because they're not rich. And so that was the narrative I leaned on, but you could lean on a different one, right? And so that's one part of the narrative, a hero, a villain, and a hero. The other part of it is the big vision of your brand. How big can you be, right? I could say, oh, we're just going to be a mom and pop shop. We're going to let people come in and out of our store and buy products every day, and that's how we're going to get big. No. I want to build a Procter & Gamble or a Unilever or a Colgate and Palmolive. Like these massive companies, or L'Oreal. They have a brand house. They have hundreds of brands underneath them, and they're massive. And I mean, their market cap is 143 billion or 200 billion or 50 billion. You know what I mean? But these are massive companies, not just one that maybe can get 10 million in revenue, right? And so you have to know that compelling narrative that's going to give them the big vision, but also that's going to set up this hero and villain story so that you can take them along the journey, and then the hero can have a hero's journey. If you guys know, if you read StoryBrand, one of my favorite books, go ahead and cop that. It talks you through how building a community is just like setting up the hero's journey in a movie. Every Marvel movie is almost the exact same, right? It's a hero's journey. He has an issue. He meets a guide who helps him on his hero journey. Think about Hercules. Hercules meets, it's Philoctetes, right? Phil? Yeah. Hercules is really strong and awkward and doesn't fit in. Then he meets Phil, who takes him to this training session and helps him become Hercules. And now he's super strong. Then he has a really big fight that he has to do with a 3-headed dog or dragon or whatever. And then he beats it. And oh my gosh, now he's Hercules. Everyone loves him again. But then he has another journey, the defining moment journey, where he has to save Meg or, actually become Hercules. And instead he saves Meg and then stays on Earth. And then it's still a hero's journey because he ends up winning in the end of it because he's still a demigod and he gets Meg, right? It's the hero's journey. It's the same story that's in Captain America. It's the same story that's in Iron Man. It's the same story that's in all these hero journey movies, right? A brand can do the exact same thing. And what I actually ended up doing for my crowdfund was taking my audience through that hero's journey so that CurlMix could be the hero. Well, technically, no. They were the hero because you got to invest, whereas before you couldn't, right? And so if we get really successful and really big and we exit, they are the hero because they're going to get the money from the exit from just investing in the beginning. I hope that's clear. That makes a lot of sense, but you need a compelling narrative because that's what people invest in, not the financials. My fourth tip is that you must go live. And you got to do a little shuck and jive. So you got to entertain people. You got to make them laugh, which is almost like being charismatic, right? Like you have to be fun to watch. Don't be boring. No one likes to sit and watch a Bloomberg, right? No, they don't. So what they end up doing is having a show host to then interview people and then make it more entertaining. You have to do a little bit of that too when you crowdfund. The fifth tip is that you must not be afraid of social media. You got to be on LinkedIn. Your crowdfunding needs to be posted on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on your YouTube channel, on literally everywhere, because every view is a possible investment. Literally, because anybody can invest. So you can't afford to ignore DMs or emails or all those things. I was responding to any and everyone all the time. I think there was 1 month where I literally took off of everything I was doing at work and just responded to comments. Literally. Because that was my job as someone who was raising funds from the public. And it was my job to educate them on how crowdfunding worked because it was so new. My sixth tip is that you have to create scarcity. And this comes from influencer Robert Cialdini, or Dini, I always get his name mixed up. But he teaches you about the six principles of influence. And one of them is creating scarcity. If you knew Black Friday is successful for one reason and one reason only. It is confined within a 24-hour period that everyone knows about. So people are primed all year long to be ready to spend on Black Friday. And that scarcity cuts out the analysis paralysis where they're like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I don't. Think about it. All of us have some kind of thing we've been saying we're going to buy for the last 5 years and haven't done it, right? What's that thing for you? Crowdfunding will be the exact same way. And for the same reason that we had our top investments on the first day and the last day, it's because of scarcity. On the first day, people don't know how long this is going to last, and they know it's a great deal. On the last day, they know this is the last chance they'll ever get to do it, and they need to jump now, right? So you have to have some level of scarcity to close your round and to raise the full amount. The seventh tip I have is average order value. Typically in e-commerce, we want our customer to spend a certain amount of money, right? You don't want someone just spending $20 when they come to your website because you got to ship it. You got to pay your employees to put it together. It's so many things that it's like the more bang you can get for your buck in that one package, you want to get, right? So what do? You add an oil that might be $20 more. You add one more bottle of product, another $20. And by the time they're checking out, they're leaving your store with $75 of stuff, right? Which means you have more margin on that first sale. And how you get to your first $100,000 in revenue is really just a factor of average order value and how many customers. So I knew I wanted to raise $5 million, right? That means I went backwards. I was like, how many people do I need to invest 1,000 or 500? And then I realized that if I didn't put a minimum on how much I was allowing people to invest, I could get people who are investing like $1, right? And there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of time that you spend on something like this. So I knew that if I wanted to at least be able to hit my goal, I had to have a higher barrier to entry. So I had to have an average order value. I want the average person to invest at least $250 because that means I need fewer people to actually get to my crowdfunded amount, right? So consider AOVs, right? Sometimes an AOV is the average order value. Sometimes people set it as high as $1,000, but I didn't want to do that because I was going to cut out a lot of our customers, and I wanted them to be able to own shares in CurlMix. So consider your average order value for your crowdfund. My 8th tip, authority. This is also another principle from Robert Cialdini's book, The 6 Principles of Influence. Authority. I need someone besides Kim to say that Kim is a valid person to invest into, right? So what did I end up doing? I ended up going to a lot of my communities of my friends. Lamar Tyler, he's one of my coaches and mentors for the last 4 or 5 years and a very good friend of mine. So he introduced me to his community because he has authority there. Or I got reposted from Viola Davis. Viola Davis is one of the biggest actors in the world, and a Black woman. And so when she reposted our story, it was like validity, right? Like authority in the highest form. So if you can get somebody to co-sign your crowdfund who has authority in your space or with your customers or in your industry, that's going to be huge. My 9th tip is to activate PR and media. PR and media are not necessarily going to give you the most investors, but they will give you more credibility and authority, like that whole Viola Davis repost. But it also gives you something to update your crowd on while you're crowdfunding. You want to be able to tell them, hey, so-and-so said this, or we were featured here. It almost confirms people's bias towards you anyway. It's like, I knew they were a great deal. That's how Black Enterprise picked it up. Or I knew they were a great investment. That's why Inc. Magazine covered it, right? That's one piece of it. But 2, it does bring new readers. And 3, more credibility. So definitely, you could either hire a PR agent. We did part-time for it. But if you're really good at getting press, you don't have to do that either. It's really up to you. But I would say you want everything firing on all cylinders. So do as much as you can to raise that money. And my 10th and final tip is to know your numbers, right? What are your numbers? The same thing that you would need to know talking to a venture capitalist is what you need to know here. You need to know your customer acquisition cost, your lifetime value, your average order value, your site frequency, competitors in the market. You need to know how the market is changing, the recession, the pandemic, all of these different things, and how to speak to them. Because even though you might think, well, most people don't know how to invest, there are still some people who are savvy investors and will still treat this like a savvy investment, right? So you don't want to just be like, well, I don't know my numbers, but you like me, I'm raising money, and get in if you want to or if you don't. You want them to trust you, which is my last bonus point, is that you need to be trusted in order to raise this kind of money from 7,000 individuals. Because think about it. Each of those 7,000 people logged into WeFunder, signed up for an account. Then they read my financials and had this document, and then they connected their bank account, and they had to give their social. Then they had to sign it twice and then confirm it twice. So it was they had to go through 50 steps to close this. 7,000 people. Now imagine how many people started that process and didn't finish. And only the people who trusted me most completed it. So if I had 7,000, just math tells you that maybe 10 times more than that started it. So maybe 70,000 people actually started it, but only 7,000 finished. And if 70,000 people started it, that means maybe I had 1 million impressions on the actual page. 1 million people actually viewed it. So if those people didn't trust me, could you imagine? It's just like I'm wasting all my efforts. So those are my tips, my 10 tips for raising $4.5 million in equity crowdfunding. Go ahead and leave your comments and questions below. I would love to give you some advice or help you in your next crowdfund. And thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Bye, guys.